So I would like to thank you, and I'm going to speak in English now, because of your patience. We have been having all these presentations in Portuguese for quite some time, and there you are. And you didn't sleep much, at least you didn't snore. I didn't listen to anything. I don't have much to say. Many of you probably spend more time with my father than I did. Of course, I have a particular experience, a more private in some way, familiar, and also a longer experience, because we experience our parents before we are aware of it, and they are in us in a very special way for all of us. They really represent models of what we are. And my father was a very strong model for me. My first memories of my father were going to see him in prison. This was my first memories. So when the first memories that I have, he was already in prison, and I visited him every weekend with my mother for a number of years. We would go and spend our holidays, at least part of it, camping in Peniche, so that we could go and visit him every day. And my father was mainly someone I would meet through a glass. I couldn't touch him. So I was very happy, paradoxically, I was a child, when he was sick, because then he would come to the prison of Caxias, which was just around the corner from our house, instead of taking hours and one day to go to Peniche and come back. There was no highways at the time. I could just take a train for 15 minutes and go visit him. But even better than that, more special than that, I could sit in a table and touch him. This was a unique experience for me, to sit in his lap, to touch him, to interact physically with him, and also to see someone that would turn into really a person, because the other one was almost like looking on a TV. If you cannot touch him, you are not sure it exists really in some way. And of course, in that experience of going to Peniche and all of this time as a child, I was already being influenced by my father. And the way I was being influenced was by slowly understanding, and even before understanding it, that there was things in life that were really worth to put our lives at risk, to dare. And those things I started to understand very early in my life were things, in this case, that had to do with respecting every human being in his dignity. And the idea that every human being, because he was equal to any other, he had the right to that, so he had the right also to have equal opportunities. I remember when he came out, the way my father and my mother, this was a time in Portugal still, when a doctor, someone who had a degree, was still treated by people who didn't have them, which was the majority of people in this country, with deference. People would curve physically on their side. And my parents always would try to do something, make them stand, and talk equal to them, and share a piece of bread, a piece of wine, a bottle of wine, whatever. And that was so genuine that obviously it was internalized on me. Of course, people like my father and my mother, for that case, are for a child, create for a child a very high standard. So I had to grow very fast. My parents were very much engaged in contributing to society. This was something that was very important for them. For my father, we have been talking about this extensively, about his life and what he did. But for my mother also was like that. But they gave me the tools. They didn't have maybe as much time as many other families have to give to their sons and daughters, but they gave me the tools to think for myself and to be a good human that could be in this life thinking of others, not only thinking about himself, and would really cherish the value of human life and human dignity. So, of course, by a very early age, I was a sort of, by 14 I was already behaving like an adult, which was a bit funny. I had to discover to be a child later in my life, just by going to do stupid things when I was after 40 or something. And I wanted to tell you a story, maybe it will come back. So anyway, just to share with you how my father, even though he was not so present in my life because he was so involved in all of the things, he was already telling me so much, giving me so much. Well, the story is when I went, I was 14 years old. I went to Paris, and for a month because I had failed French at 8th grade. And my mother said, "Well, if you failed French, that's not a problem. You go to Paris for a month, stay with some friends of us, and you will learn it fast." In fact, I did. I went for a month, and because my parents had taught me to be independent, to think for myself, to use all the tools that my intelligence and put it to work, I was going every day and visiting Paris by myself all day, and I had a plan. And my plan was, I was 14 then, my plan was I'll go see museums in the morning and go to skate parks in the afternoon. And I did it religiously for a month. I didn't understand probably most of what I've seen, but again, all these things were things that were given to me by my parents. It's funny that I'm just seeing a colleague of mine, someone I worked for many years, and he was reading the text that was in Lip homage page about my father. And this colleague of mine who read it came to me spontaneously and said, "Well, we worked together for many years. And when I read this life of your father and how he behaved and how he approached problems and his work, etc., I could see you in that." Well, at my level, I used to say, my father was really someone that I see as someone special who really gave something to society, obviously. We all agree on that. But he lives in me. And he was very, very happy when I had a child, late in life, that he's there. And maybe this jumps one generation, you know. My father was a public figure, I was a family one. And maybe the next generation will be again giving something to society in a more consistent way. So we had a long day. I want to end by once again thanking you all, and thanking my father. Thank you.